some form of employment, it's okay. But uh, as a person, if I was to get the leadership position, the first thing I would go through the education system and maybe see what is really the best model, because as per now, even the CBC, if you hear most stakeholders around it, they're saying it's not really giving the right skills, and we are likely to see a higher rate of unemployment than we are seeing at the moment. So the first thing is the education system. Then after the education system, I become truthful about whatever I'm saying, because even Ruto's the I don't know 100,000 jobs, 200,000 jobs. I don't know anyone in my circle, and I've traveled and I've lived across the country. I've lived in Western, I've lived in Nairobi, I've lived in Coast, and I don't know anyone who has benefited from it. The only thing that I came to understand is the there's some time back, I think it was United States, and there is a local agriculture college. It's called Bukura. So the government kind of hijacked their program, and Musalia Mudavadi launched it as they were like giving them some training before they go, but it was never a government project. So the first thing is the education. Then I become truthful about the employment opportunities and whatever is going on. Thank you, and I hope I'm clear enough.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mugala. Those are your thoughts. I would say I've interacted with the youngsters because it was just on Friday. I just posted data analyst volunteers, and I was so shocked how many volunteers are ready to work with me. Volunteers. When I stress volunteers, I am sure you really understand all of us what I mean. Someone who is not paid. And I received a lot of CVs, even people with over 15 years of experience. Hmm. It was very shocking for me. And what I would say, personally, I was really weeping. And I was just thinking, if I would be having a place where I would bring on board these people and ensure that they get those skills that they're looking for, and I look for also opportunities for them to work, how beautiful would it be? And that is what I was just asking Mugala. Within your own capability and position, how can you empower another youngster like you? How can you pick other two mentees from your age group? How can you pick other three or even 50 of them? Having worked with youngsters, I've also seen a lot of youngsters do not want to become employers. They just want to feed their own stomach, and once they are full, they forget that there are others who are also borrowing them something to eat, something to bring on table. The most of the youngsters, they want to do maybe tunazitanga sherehe, tunaenda tunapiga sherehe, mtu ananunuliwa kila kitu, and then after that mtu anarudi kwake tu bila something to feed the stomach. I don't know what I'm thinking and what I'm having in mind. How can we empower millennials, Gen Zs, and the baby boomers who are also coming? How can we really empower them so that they can have a very strong background ya kujitetea? All right. Um, I don't know whether Western has something to add, or Mizani or Mogala, because I'm going to close in a few. So if you have something to add, maybe we will proceed maybe from the next meeting on way forward as a nation, because we are really looking for a solution. And those questions keep popping up in every mind of any individual. And that's the reason as why we keep seeing ourselves in these spaces, because we are taking roles and responsibilities which do not belong to us. we have already, in quotes, quote and quotes, we have entrusted the leaders, but they have failed. So we are coming on board to work for them, which initially we should be doing our own stuff and we should not even be minding because we have already entrusted them, but they're not really entrustful, if there is something like that in English. So yeah, Mizani, I can say you have something to add. Go ahead.
Thank you, Esther. And this will be my final submission. To start us off with just the statements you've issued, respectfully so, there is a belief system among us, the populace, that we already did our part when we casted the vote and elected a few people to go and represent our desires as a country. However, just like you have highlighted, we did our job true, but we have a bigger job to do. And that bigger job is in Article 3 of the Kenyan Constitution, which says every person has an obligation to respect, uphold, and defend this Constitution. So, despite the fact that we have representatives that are elected, they're in parliament, and they are doing every other thing that you feel in your view, you did your job and you elected them, and now you have to come here and try to, what I'll say, micromanage their duty performance. Actually, you are that which is expected of you. Because remember, it is not a mere suggestion, it is actually an obligation. And the moment we all understand that fundamental part of this constitution that demands of us to do that, then we will see that it is not in vain we are having these talks, questioning the kind of country we want and the way forward once we are out of this turbulence. Number two, I listened to Mugala and he was speaking about the issue of ghost employees. And when we talk about ghost employees in our country, it looks good on paper because on paper they say it's a doctor that is employed. Now, let us now try and really dissect that further. If you are a foreman or a groundsman for your boss and they tell you sijali utalipwa na pesa ya county, all you need to do is sign this and that paper, they go give you a particular grade within the county. That happens, yes, but you do not have even the ID, rather the withdrawal card of the cash or control of the money that comes to your account. So when this money is paid, your so-called boss takes the money as he pleases or even pays money to that account, but you still get your 5 or 15,000 Kenyan shillings. So by the end of the day, indeed, on paper, you are a doctor, a very good ghost worker that does not exist in the county because you work for your boss at home in the farm. You get paid 15,000 shillings. And then you're wondering, how is that possible? It's possible because those looters and thieves in those offices ensure that all the money is paid does not go through their account, goes through a pseudo account that is assumed to be a different individual, but they're the very people that are controlling it. So it is very beneficial for them to maintain that stealing spree and have a figure that looks like represent that account. So the existence of ghost workers, when one questions why it's even happening, one wonders, why do we have individuals that have more than 2 identity cards? And there was a conversation around the chip cards and all that, and I don't want to go into that. But I think it is deliberate. The people that are concerned with the data, including private data and information that enables one to open an account, do actually have these and normalcy continuing in our systems because it enriches those who benefit from stealing public resources. You saw the other day, the PSB talk was suggesting that the fact that we have had a problem with Nyayo House, we are going to move that thing somewhere else. And by so doing, we will restore the damage of that department. It is akin to somebody telling me, and I've seen it enough times, when Kenyan roads are poorly constructed and people die because of bad engineering or intentionally so because the person that was hired to do the job actually hired another person that could do it cheaper because they had to cut deals, ends up putting up a road that is not motorable. And even if it is dangerous to the road user. So the only thing that you will do, you'll erect a sign that shows this is a black spot and not redesign this road so that it fits the purpose. That is what these people at immigration there and the interior are doing. Instead of fixing the problem, they're just trying to give some painkillers and do what I will compare to a makeup session whereby you get a model, apply some good makeup, and voila, it's a new being. This has to come to an end if we want to see that Kenya you are talking about. But it calls for deliberate and leader-based decision that are not going to be very friendly, but are going to be for the bigger aspiration of all of us as a country. And that's why, with your permission, Esther, I want to invite all that tuned in tonight to tomorrow's space that we'll be discussing on Mizani on what exactly is effective public participation. Most of the bills and suggestions of policies that are being put up have actually been fought because of public participation. But what exactly is public participation and how effective should we carry out public participation? Thank you. And I do want to land at that point. Thank you.
Asante sana Mizani. Mugala, go ahead and do your remarks.
Okay, maybe just one final thing. The unemployment crisis among the youth is something that is really heartbreaking. But one space that I've really encountered with and I've referred a lot of youth to is somewhere called Swahili Port. It's in Mombasa and it caters for youth around Kilifi and all that. And also, if in case you don't have a job and you're looking for opportunities, there's a friend of mine. She has a WhatsApp channel. It's called Ask Rookie, and there is Simons Ingari on Twitter. You can any youth in the space, you can also follow up with him. And then lastly, as we talk the next steps, there is a very powerful book called Exposing Lies of the Empire by Andrei Vuchek. He's Russian. So he studied the revolutions in the Americas and whatever happened in Bolivia, what happened with Chavez and Fidel Castro and all that. He also came to Kenya and talked about our system, and he went all the way to Malindi where they were building the new port. He was in Nairobi, and he did. This book was published in 2015, but it talks things that are a reality up to this point. So those in the space, maybe if you can be able to get the book, you also go through it, and then you really understand where we are as a nation. Thank you, Esther.
All right. Sorry. I don't know what is happening with my mic. Whenever I want to unmute, it doesn't allow me. Thank you so much, Mugala. Western, do you have something to say as the final remarks before I end the space. Weston.
Thank you, Esther. Mizani has talked about Nyayo House. Mizani, I think the reasons as to why they're moving the migration from Nyayo are different. Because I've always been concerned why the particularly the immigration department was housed at Nyayo House. Because of the problematic history of Nyayo House, you know, with the torture chambers under the Moi regime. And people have really undergone a lot of traumatic experiences at the same building in search of IDs and passports and stuff like that. So for me, Nyayo House symbolizes amnesia as far as our society is concerned. Amnesia. This refusal to come to terms with our history, with our past. In another society, Nyayo House would be a museum to remind people, Kenyans, and those who come to Kenya, how integral that building was as far as degradation of human dignity is concerned, as far as dehumanization of Kenyans by fellow Kenyans is concerned. And to, make us going forward, make a commitment never to treat one another like that. But clearly, we forgot about that and it's business as usual. So they're moving immigration from Nyas to some other building. It's because of rents, stuff like that, not for philosophical reasons, which should be the most compelling reason that people cannot continue being tortured in their search for identities in a building that housed torture chambers in the past. And those chambers have now been opened to Kenyans so that they come to terms with their painful history. So, Esther, why we're not moving as a country is because of amnesia, institutionalization of amnesia. We don't benefit from the civilizing influence of memory. But even the things we're using, like computers and handsets, they have memory. How can it be that we as a society don't have memory? And as I said when I opened my remarks earlier, everything else passes except the past. So you can't wish away your past as a society. It won't pass. You have to come to terms with it. Learn its painful lessons. Infuse those lessons in what you're doing now. If you're a government, the policies you're making now to ensure that that past does not haunt you. But to ignore it or sweep it under the carpet or criminalize any conversation around it is an exercise in futility. Which brings me, Esther, to my other point, nation building. All these things we're talking about, they can only be realized if we get the nation building project right. The idea of Kenya is not old. The idea of a Luo is not old. The idea of a Kikuyu or a Masa is not old. You can talk about the idea of a Yoruba in Nigeria or the idea of a Shona in Zimbabwe or Zulu in South Africa. Those ideas are not older than the respective nation states within which those ideas are found. So the responsibility of the political elite that came after colonialists was to build a nation state out of multiple nations. You to build a functioning nation state called Kenya out of a mosaic of nations, those ethnic groups. That's a function of the political elite, so that you demobilize sectarian interest. Those things about enduring JK, I don't know, whoever council of elders, those kind of things. Those kind of things are destructive. They impede the realization of a nation state. And when you realize a nation state that is cohesive, then you can use it to realize all these things we're talking about, development as freedom. You can better people's lives, you can dignify people, you can advance and build a civilization and move a country from Stone Age to a first world country within a generation or two. But they don't do that. They don't do that. So there are lots of divisions within Kenya and many other African countries. And where there are divisions, you have got bickering, you have got violence, you have got suspicion, you have got mistrust, and a lot of energy is dissipated to meaningless and useless things. That point has to be packed. The other one is state building. It's about institutions. These things we talk about, the constitution, the rule of law, democracy, human rights, name it. Those things are imperative as far as institution building is concerned. If we don't build robust, independent institutions anchored on the rule of law, on equity, on equality, then the other things we set up for ourselves about these very lofty blueprints, Vision 2030, when 2030 reaches, we'll push the goalposts behind. Agenda 2063, if you're talking about Africa continentally, those things cannot be realized where institutions have decayed, and instead we have got warlords and big men and big women and personality cults. You can't advance, you can't modernize a country at all. It's institutions. And institutions, no one towers above institutions, irrespective of your station in life. It's important that we pack that. Which why it brings me to the idea of Jimmy Wanjigi when he talks about his life is in danger. He also reminds us of something, that bad governance knows no friend. Impunity knows no friend. If you're party to, underhand deals and agreements and all sorts of things to clinch power, well, those people have no regard for the rule of law. They're getting into power to amass wealth and to enrich themselves and their cronies. Well, it's not just the people of Kenya who will pay the ultimate price. You also, who is an accomplice in the, building and catapulting those people into power, at some point you'll also pay the ultimate price. Jimmy Wanjigi was instrumental in hoisting Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto into power in 2013. He's confessed that. So don't ever think impunity, autocracy, disregard for the rule of law can favor you and somebody else will pay the price. No, it knows no friend. So we must all be invested in good governance. And we call out people who are injurious to good governance and to the rule of law. And that's why I put it quite clearly. My position is that there are grounds to impeach the deputy president. They are to do that. And it will be in the best interest of democratization in Kenya for one reason. When you punish wrongdoing, you don't just punish the person who is doing wrong. You also put in place something called deterrence. That people who would want to behave like this person who has been punished will have to think twice, because there are consequences. Those consequences could be retributive. Those consequences could be about shaming. Those consequences could be political. There are consequences. But we have a society where there are no consequences for wrongdoing. I think we can't put this, clearly enough. The political elite in Kenya think that they can act whichever way and get away with it. But you may ask, who are these people who are doing that? Of course, these people are wanting, as far as the rule of law is concerned, the parliamentarians. They're wanting as far as national cohesion is concerned, as far as nation building is concerned, because they're also bigoted. They thrive on bigotry. But When the political elite that don't serve our collective interests like this implode, I think it's something to celebrate. When they implode themselves like that, because they're bound to implode. We can't take sides. They must implode. And those who survive, we can tell them that we put you on notice. It's a matter of time. You will also fall. You won't stand for long. But we can't take sides and say, no, look, this and that. Why are you? No. They must implode. They must cannibalize one another. And those who remain, we tell them that it's just a matter of time. You will also follow suit. I think it's important to do that. Secondly, it's imperative that we call out politicians who caucus along ethnic lines. We are not calling them out. We must call out politicians who caucus on tribal lines. We must shame them. We must stigmatize them. In fact, countries that thrive, it's not because of the rule of law, it's because of shame. That you've done something that is so shameful that people look at you as an outlier. This person is from which society? People in this society don't behave like this. So you are so shameful. In Japan, you will commit suicide. You do something that is completely at variance with what the society expects you to do. You just take your own life. That's extreme. But that's shame. In other societies, you resign, you fall on your own sword. You take political responsibility. You may not have signed any documents, but because somebody signed documents under your watch, your docket, your juniors, and you are not aware, that mere fact that you are not aware of what was happening under your ministry or your department or the office that you run, you fall on your sword and take political responsibility. We don't have that in Kenya. And it's problematic that people can do all sorts of things and explain them away and say, we're going to go to court. We're going to hire attorneys and go to court. We'll meet in court. We will stagger this problem for years until you forget. We will tire you down. We want to infuse shame in our political culture. And impeachment is part of that you're going to be impeached. Even if you don't go to jail, at least you'll be stigmatized such that you don't hold any public office subsequently. That's sufficient punishment. So we must welcome that. We must welcome that. So, Esther, I rest my case. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Asante sana Western. Um, Maybe I would just pose some concerns on what I've just recalled about businesses in our country. And I've realized if your business is not really supported in line with the government, it doesn't take its shape very well. For example, we are saying issues to do with the buses, matatus. There are matatus circles which have been stopped not to work, and they claim they have not been paying taxes. And when you look at, there are also matatu circles which are in alignment with the government, and they are being allowed to move freely, and there's not any issue. I think everyone has seen about Direct Line that was being used for insurance